just because a book is banned doesn't mean it's actually any good. Okay, well, that was a fun start to this video. I would like to start off by prefacing that it's unclear online whether or not this book is actually banned. I've seen plenty of comments saying that the author just took it down and made it no longer accessible, so it's not actually a banned book, it's just that the author didn't like the backlash from it. But then from the author's own Instagram page, she literally says that this is a banned book. So based upon what the author has said and what other broad things that are stated online say, I'm going to go with this book is a banned book. And that just means, from what I've gathered online, that it's been removed from libraries and bookstores and it's very hard to access. You can get it, and you can get it legally with the actual original copies, not pirated versions, for like $70 and up. You can find them on places like Amazon, although I think right now there's only one left in stock. I also saw some on Bongo Books. A lot of those that are independently sold are going to be quite expensive. You can get this book at Barnes & Noble on ebook for $4, but if you want an actual copy of the book, it's going to be pricey if you want to legitly and legally get this book. And it's not a very good book, and I wouldn't recommend buying it or putting any money into investing and getting this book. I decided to read this book because one of the genres that I like to read is dark serial killer revenge arc stories. I always love a dark serial killer revenge arc story. I had read two previous to this book that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed the Mind F series. I thought this was super fun. I gave it 4 stars. And I really liked Butcher and Blackbird, which I know was not everybody's cup of tea. It's also very predominantly comedy, but I thought this was really fun. So I decided to pick up this book because it was also supposed to be a serial killer revenge arc story. And I want to preface, I went into this book really clearly knowing what was the content of what was going to be in this book. I knew there was going to be child essay. I knew to be really careful as I read the first 50 pages of this book that would be the most emotionally traumatizing part of reading this book. So I felt really ready for that. I'd also like to preface that I have been a domestic violence and essay advocate specifically for youth and children. So I have seen these things play out in real life. And one of the reasons why I'm drawn to serial killer revenge arc stories is because when you're an advocate in these positions, your job is solely and exclusively to aid survivors. And that's a good thing. Our job is to offer support and guidance if necessary, resources, support in what ways that we are legally incapable of doing. And that's a really good thing. But especially being a youth and children's advocate and seeing some of the things that have been done to children with regards to domestic violence and SA, there's a lot of rage buildup that exists in advocates. There's sorrow, there's grief, and there is anger. And we deal with that in a variety of ways. And one of the ways that I enjoy dealing with that is reading serial killer revenge arc stories where the perpetrator actually gets what's coming for him. And that's just the truth. That is why it's nice to get a little bit of a release in these books from all of the really heavy emotional and soul strain that comes from being an advocate and being faced with that kind of behavior on a daily basis. So I went into this knowing what the context was and feeling prepared to read those challenging first 50 pages. And honestly, when I read those first 50 pages, I thought that it was done pretty well. There was only 3 pages in that first section that was like really hit on the child essay part that was really gut-wrenchingly, really, really difficult and painful to read, which is a good thing. It should be hard to read. It is a very painful topic. The next 50 pages after that was like kind of a build-up for where the story was going. I thought it was kind of taking its time, and it didn't really feel like it fit in with some of how I think a person in the position of the main characters would psychologically respond to their situations, but I was still like doing my best to stick with it. And yes, I DNF'd this book at around 120 pages. I got so bored and annoyed with the world, honestly, that was built, with the logic of the story as it unfolded. Things just gradually became more and more absurd and more out of the realm of genuine, like, what is reality, what is physically possible. Don't get me wrong, these main characters in this book definitely have mental health issues because of the trauma that they faced. That I was expecting. I just don't think that they were presented accurately at all. And then some of how the world or how the story unfolds just didn't make any sense. And I just kind of laughed at it. And I was like, this is supposed to be my internal fulfillment of like, haha, we got back at the bad guys. But this just, by at page 120, I was so taken out of the book, so taken out of the story, and really just felt like this is absurd. So I don't recommend this book. Now, on the book banning part of this book, I don't get why it's banned. I do want to back up for a second and clarify that I think the concept of a banned book is sometimes nebulous in what people are talking about. So, for example, libraries are only so large. Depending upon where they are located, each individual library is only as large as it can be and can only hold certain number of books, and those who are in charge of the library need to decide the best books that should be in that library. And there's a lot of contextual parts to that as well. So for example, an elementary school library shouldn't have any adult fiction, any young adult fiction, because it's just too complex for children to read, for elementary school students to read. So no, ACOTAR does not belong in an elementary school library that only has a limited amount of shelf space, and none of the students can actually read this level of writing. Plus, the content of this book book doesn't quite make sense for that age range. That makes sense. Honestly, books like Haunting and Hunting Adeline, although I've never read them, from the descriptions, I would say that these books don't belong in any school library K through 12. That doesn't really make sense if you're going to have limited bookshelf space in schools. That shelf space should be used for something other than adult dark romance. I agree with that logic, but that's not really what book banning is about. Book banning is when certain books are removed from libraries who already had them or were already part of the literature that was going to be read, and they're being removed for very specific purposes that have more to do with homophobia, transphobia, political maneuvering, a denial of the past of racism and slavery, etc. When we're looking at removing books because we don't want to face the harsh reality of the American past, that's a problem. If we're removing books because we don't agree with the presentation of a gay couple, that's a problem. Yes, I do think libraries need to and should, and they're already doing this, curating their collection for what is relevant for the audience that is coming into their library. Even bookstores do this. There's certain bookstores that are really tailored to just romantasy or really tailored to other genres. That's great. But when we en masse say, let's get rid of all of these books, let's not have them anywhere because we want to deny the past, yeah, that's a problem. So when I see that this book is a banned book, I'm kind of confused by that terminology. If it's just that this book isn't going to be in certain school libraries because of its content, okay, but it's currently not available in bookstores and it's very difficult to get. So why? I just didn't quite get it. The content is hard, especially in the first 50 pages, but honestly, I've seen TV shows in the United States that's more explicit than what's in this book. It doesn't go into heavy detailed description. It's there, the child essay is there, but it's not super graphic in my opinion, actually. It explains it. You do have go through a 3-page scene of it. That is all true. But genuinely, like, there has been TV shows and movies produced in the US and put out that is worse. So I don't really know, again, if the term banned book makes sense, but then at the same time, it's very difficult to get the paper copy in the United States. So that kind of lends more to maybe this author just removed the book herself. I'm not really sure on this front. But what I can say is that I don't recommend this book. I don't recommend paying for it. If you want to give it a try and you're okay with doing an ebook, then buy it off of the Barnes & Noble store for $4 and try it that way. I don't think it does a good job of lending towards realism, and I think there's other stories that do this revenge serial killer arc story just a lot better. So I want to also give a quick disclaimer. I have never written a book. I am an academic writer. I am not a fiction writer. So I'm giving this judgment that I didn't like this book, but I want to preface that I have not written a book. So, I'm coming at it from the stance of a reader, not a writer. And also, I'm not doing this to try to harm or damage the author's ability to sell this book. In fact, I'm doing this because the book is so unbelievably expensive if you try to find it in a legal manner. And I genuinely don't think it's anywhere near worth that cost. So I'm putting this out there as just a statement of don't financially invest in this book. It's really, really expensive. I did financially invest because it was a banned book and because I was really excited about that term. Because, oh, you're going to tell me I can't read something? Watch me. I'm still going to read it. And then it ended up being meh. So I'm telling you, don't get this. Don't spend the tons of money to buy this book or the time it takes to read it. I'm telling you that it wasn't worth it for me. And I was able to sell this book, which was nice, so I could get some of my money back. I did not get all of my money back for it. I don't recommend it. I want to conclude this video real fast with a quick spoiler example of what I had a problem with in the book, just to give that contextual reasoning. A lot of this video is spoiler free, but in case you're curious about like a direct example, a spoiler example, one of the characters, he is supposedly trapped inside of a like underground unofficial prison that rich people send people for like 11 years. And this place is supposed to be really dark. There's not a lot of light. From what the description says, there's 2 to 3 people per cell and there's over 50 cells. So there's over 100 to 150 people in this underground prison place created by the evil people, the evil rich people in this world. And I just sat there going, that doesn't make any financial sense. If they hated these individuals and wanted to get rid of them, why would they keep them alive? Our main male character was kept alive for 11 years in one of these cells. 11 years of feeding and maintaining the ability to survive. What? And then towards the part of the book where I just like, I'm done, he shows the main female character a full back tattoo that he got while in this prison. And it's a perfect rendering of her face in a colored tattoo. And I just died laughing because I was like, that is the dumbest, most absurd thing I have ever read. There's no way, given how you've described this prison that's dark, that has very little light, you're using a needle, not an actual tattoo gun in order to create this rendering. There was no reference photo given to the artist. The 2 people who were in his cell with him weren't artists. So how in the world did they do a perfect full facial back tattoo in color that was very clearly the main female character? I just was like, that is just dumb. That is dumb. I like it's trying to lend to the romance of it, but really it just comes across as stupid. And for a book that starts so serious, for a conversation with regards to child SA being so serious, for it to just veer off into what I would consider stupidity was really frustrating to read. If I'm going to go into a book that's talking about something really hard and, you know, the solution that that book produces, which is serial kill these terrible perpetrators, that's a very serious conversation. And taking it down a dumb path, I don't like that. I really didn't like that. Now, I will say Butcher and Blackbird took this narrative and made it funny and really took a comedic angle, but I felt like it did it better, and I didn't feel like we took something serious and made something stupid, in my opinion. So again, as I said, I have never written a book, so I'm not trying to judge from the standpoint of a writer. I'm sure that is a very challenging task to do. But as a reader and as a domestic violence and SA youth and children's advocate, this really let me down. That is that on this book. Keep reading what you love, and I will see you next time.